Hey Dylan, what's up? We're here with Dylan and University of Wisconsin of River Falls. Dylan, thank you so much for your time. And yeah, tell us a bit about you, like your journey and how you ended up uh, in in the University of Wisconsin.
Yeah, so like most people in the space, I didn't go to college to be an esports coach. I'm not a former professional player. When I went to college, even the thought of being on some sort of organized esports team for my university wasn't something that was even on people's radars. People weren't really thinking about those things. So, when I went to college, I just started playing League of Legends the summer right before. So I've been playing since season one. That's how early it was, right? So, I mean, most of the time I was in college was before the LCS and the LEC even existed. And after 4 years of undergrad, I went on to get my master's in teaching because I really wanted to help students find success in the same way that college had set me up for success. And I've always felt like the educational system has been a really strong part of what builds community and character for young people in America. So I just wanted to continue to give back to that. And after beginning my teaching career at Carmel High School in Indiana, my home state, I started to meet a lot of players who were extremely talented and motivated in esports. They were ranked G in ESEA and Counter Strike. They were Legend in Hearthstone. They were SSL in Rocket League, right? There were these really tremendously talented, high ranked players right in my classes at Carmel. And several of them wanted to have a place or an opportunity to compete. So my second year of teaching, after learning how to run a competitive program my first year by taking over the debate team, I started the esports program from scratch there. And really, that was something I worked with collaboratively with students. I am a very competitive person. So I had my motivations create a team that was focused on competition first and not just being a casual club, but really being a place where we try to get competitive results and promote our players' ability to improve within the game. We started out with around 35 players that first year. We ended up winning a national championship in Hearthstone in the high school esports league. So that happened our very first semester. Second semester, we followed up with a lot of success still. We ended up with three, it was either two or three, like back to back to back second place finishes in Counter Strike before eventually winning a national championship in that game as well. So, we had that like strong base to build off from. And then year two, our numbers ballooned. We had 100 players on the roster. Year three, we ended up spiking to about 150 just because we were doing so much of our work online and hybrid during the COVID times. And then when we finally built an in-person lab, so this was something I worked with our students. We didn't have any funding from our school, so we had to raise all the money, take donations. My friends and I were donating old parts and builds. Some of the students were as well. We created a 20 PC computer lab in an old lifeguard classroom in the building, and I scaled our numbers back to 100 students because we were now operating all of our matches from that facility. So that was really how I got my start in esports. Over the course of doing that, I founded a state league for Indiana called the Indiana Esports Network with a few other people. We now serve free esports competition year round to 130 schools in the state. And after the 2022 academic year, I started to look at options in collegiate, and I landed at UW River Falls because honestly, the support and the vision they had for their program aligned with what I had always wanted to do with Carmel. Building this really legitimate pipeline for players to come in, compete as student athletes, get the resources that they need, be able to work on themselves not only as a player but as a student, and set them up with a degree that's going to be extremely valuable and help them long term in the workforce. Those were all really key parts of what I was trying to build and what we're doing here now at UW River Falls. Within this first year, I've been focused on building out the club, building out the recreational program, and recruiting for the varsity team, which is launching this fall. We also have our computer lab up and ready to go. We initially got started in October, but I've since made some changes to it. So this upcoming fall, we're really going to launch like the complete version of that space with 26 computers and 3 console stations for club, recreational, and varsity players to utilize on a daily basis.
Whoa, that is the most specific intro I've ever had. Amazing info. And also, like when you were in college, like were you part of a athletic team or a club? Like, how was your college experience being a gamer and not finding a place like you're already built now?
Yeah. So, I mean, I kind of did what everyone did in college when they weren't a part of a club, and I just ended up finding people who shared my interests and living with them or spending basically all of my time with them. So, by my second year of college, I had 4 roommates, and we all just played League of Legends together constantly, or we were playing Borderlands 2 or whatever the big game was at that time. But it always came back to League of Legends. I probably played 3 or 5 thousand games of League of Legends in my first 2 years of college. Just playing way too much, but not really having any sort of formal group or organization to do it with. I will say that a lot of those friends that I played with during those times, I'm still close friends with today. My best friend, who I've known since 4th grade, is someone who, when we went to different colleges, we continued playing League of Legends and other games together. One of my other close friends I kind of met just because he was in a common space in our dorm building playing League of Legends on a laptop, and I walked by and I was like, "Hey, I play that game too," right? So it was more of that, just grassroots, bumping into people, meeting people who share your interest, and then you cling together and you start playing a bunch of normal games and ranked games together. But yeah, as far as having a club or organization, I was a first generation college student. I didn't even know how to start with forming one of those or what that would even mean. And I was pretty busy as a performing arts major as well with, additional rehearsals and practices for things. So it really was just something that kept me connected with my friends both on campus and off campus throughout those 4 years.
That's great. And also, like, right now, when you're like, for example, recruiting for a player, okay, when you're looking for players, what is the soft skills, or when you have the meeting, what is what you are looking for in a player, and how do you know, or how can you tell that he's going to be a good fit in your program?
Yeah. So, I mean, the general process is really simple, right? I like to introduce myself first because I
Mhm.
think that's good manners, right? And then I want to get to know about them as a person, right? I want to know what they're looking for academically from a university, right? I'm helping
Mhm.
people become student athletes. And I know it's cliched, but the student comes first, right? And I think in
Mhm.
esports, that sometimes gets lost because the access to playing in tier 2, tier 3, or even going fully pro is so much more wide open than it is in any other sport, right? You could be a 15, 16-year old and, trying out and even competing with professional organizations, right? So for me, it's really about finding students who aren't just going to college to have some place to play for 4 years,
Mhm.
but really trying to uh, create that investment in themselves through further education, right? I want to understand what options they're looking at. And they don't have to have it set in stone. I think it's a little bit ridiculous that we ask 17 and 18-year-olds to decide what they want to do for the next like 45 years of their life. But I do want to see, do you have some idea of what you would enjoy studying or have an interest in? And make sure that we can accommodate that at UWRF and that you are going to get a really great education in that field. So we're really close to the Minneapolis St. Paul area, known as the Twin Cities in America. That's
Mhm.
a large metro area with about 16 Fortune 500 companies. So we have a lot we can offer students in terms of not only their education here, but getting outside opportunities for internships and work studies. And I always start the conversation with that, right? Let's see what you want to study, and let's see if that's something that we can support not only on campus, but off campus as well. So you not only leave with a degree, but you leave with a resume. So I would say the very first soft skill that I'm really focused on is a student who is, goal oriented and someone who is planning ahead and really looking at their trajectory of what they're going to get from college holistically rather than just solely focusing on the esports side of things. After that, I ask them a little bit about what does your esports experience look like? And I try to go more in depth than just like, okay, what role do you play? What's your main? What's your peak rank or whatever? Those are very simple data points that I can get if they send me a tracker link or if I have the tracker link before going into the conversation, right? I try not to just ask things that I could find on your op.gg. Instead, I want to know what kind of teams have you been in? What has your role been within that team? Were you someone who primarily served as a facilitator? Were you maybe someone who tried to motivate your teammates and contributed a lot to communications? Were you an IGL or a shot caller? I want to understand what you think you provide to a team outside of just good gameplay, because we know that there are just going to be days where you don't play well, right? That's true for every single player. So you have to bring those intangibles that create a more consistent, successful team environment. So coming down to what are the things you're going to provide and do day in and day out, even when your shots aren't landing.
That's great. No, because I ask you that question also for international students, but like also for like, I mean, you mentioned that you started with 35 players, and then you tripled the idea.
Right.
So like, you must have like I just wanted to know like what is like how do you approach students, and how do you make the students be part of your team? And yeah, that's a very amazing approach. Are there any other approaches that you use for like recruiting, and you tell students that they're going to improve both in esports and academically? Is there something else that you want to share?
Yeah, so it's about investment, right? I want our students to feel like their contributions to the program genuinely matter, and that's something that I did really well at my previous institution. Whenever students had ideas or initiatives that they wanted to take on, I did my best to make them happen, right? No matter how small or big, right? And that included students who wanted to design merchandise, students who wanted to work on our streams, students who wanted to even host tournaments. So one of the things we did at Carmel, out of a desire from our students to just have better tournaments to play in themselves, is we started hosting an online national tournament. We did that within 2 months of everything shutting down in COVID. And it really stemmed from the fact that we were playing in a number of online tournaments and they were all really bad. They had bad rule sets, bad formats, bad pricing. So I had a group of sophomores and juniors who said, "Hey, can we just do this ourselves?" And I said, "Okay, yeah, sure." And that is where the Greyhound Battlegrounds was born. And that was me on stream for 40 hours with my students that weekend. We had students from California to New York competing for their school teams. And we gave away cash prizing, we gave away trophies, and we had a really awesome foundation. After 2 years of doing it, HyperX eventually sponsored the tournament. And that's something that those students who participated in it, whether it was getting the initial concept out there or supporting it over the next couple of years, they'll always remember, right? And that level of investment is something that I want to cultivate in all my students. So no matter what you bring to us, gameplay wise, you also feel like you can be someone who genuinely makes an impact on the direction of the program. I would say the next key part of what I'm doing here is the fact that I want to maintain a high level of quality for our varsity players. This first year is looking like 40 to 45 players on the roster, but I don't want to necessarily double or triple that anytime soon. I would really love to stretch to around 50 to 60 players for year two and then keep it at that mark and just really start replacing players who are graduating or leaving due to other circumstances, right? And I think that if we can stabilize at around that 50 or 60 mark and continue to offer not only myself as a head coach, but what we're doing this year, I'll have 6 assistant coaches that work on each of the games strategically. Continue with our workouts with our strength and conditioning coaches to help you get fitter. Continue giving you the resources to travel to competitions and compete for the university as a team without any cost to yourself. These are all things I feel like are essential to what we're trying to do to build a truly varsity esports program, as opposed to something that is more akin to a student club. I don't want this to feel like something that you could have done if you just got together with 5 other students on campus and went to the student involvement office and filed with the organizations there, right? I want it to feel like something that is extremely similar to our hockey team, our football team, our basketball team, in the way that we support you, take care of you, and set you up for success on and off the field.
Super valuable information. Like, you say something, I have a question, then you keep like, okay, but like the most curious thing is like, also you mentioned that you have all these assistant coaches. In your previous high school, you like empowered students basically to like um, grow the program with you. Do you still do it in River Falls, or do you like have like full like assistant coaches or some full-time people, or do you also like encourage students to fill in positions not in the competitive side, but like do you also like encourage like the development of skills if a student has a skill that they can add to the program? Do you still like enhance this or?
Yeah, yeah, no, that's a great question. So, at Carmel, I will say part of the reason why I did what I did is because it was entirely just me and the students. It wasn't until my very last year that I was able to get a very small amount of money to pay assistant coaches. And I had around two assistant coaches who came in once a week to help with certain game day activities. But for the most part, in order to run at scale and be so successful, I had to empower those students. I had to have students step up and be not only really team captains, but kind of like team coaches for their rosters and play a huge role in organizing practices, working with their teammates to go over VOD reviews and scrims. These were things that were essential for us to be successful at that scale with the limited resources I had. Here at UWRF, my focus is continuing to allow students to take on more opportunities, but not requiring it because I want to have compensated individuals who are doing some of these roles, right? So instead of me having one of our Smash Brothers players, for instance, basically serve as team captain and coach, what I will have is a paid fighting game coach who works with the students both in person and remote because they're local to our area. And this is someone who has experience working with professional players already. And they're able to provide a really high quality outlook on the game, actual coaching to help them improve. I'll be there as well, day in and day out. This is my full time job. So that's something I always assure players with. Just because I have an assistant coach who's focused on the strategy of the game doesn't mean that I'm removed from the process. I'm just not going to, I would say, try and contribute where I'm not strong at, right? So for instance,
Mhm.
my strategic coach may really be focused on like, hey, this is your main, really look at these matchups and try out X, Y, and Z. I'm not going to come in and also be like, yeah, and try A, B, and C also strategically because that's not my expertise. What I will do is continue to work with that student on their mindset, on their goals, on their communication, right? Things that are really important to a team environment but aren't necessarily tied to your mechanics or your macro in game. I would say the second part of how we're approaching student involvement and investment at UWRF is providing them with volunteer opportunities to continue doing a lot of the things that made us successful at Carmel. At Carmel, I did have dedicated students who didn't play any games, but were still involved in running our streams, our social media platforms, graphic design, merchandise, right? So, any students who want to get involved with that at UWRF, I'm going to pursue creating opportunities for them to create contributions to our program. Some of that is going to be through curricular activities. So I've been working with professors and their esports classes they're creating. We'll have our first esports marketing and communications class this upcoming fall, and students from that class will actually create materials that can be used by the varsity program. So outside of that, we'll continue to offer students the opportunity to work on our streams, jump on and cast for games, get those experiences. We have students who want to plan and organize tournaments already. We'll be hosting a Smash Brothers tournament in September as a result of that and trying to bring over as many players as possible. It'll also serve as a major fundraiser for the program. So that's another way that students are giving back. And then, as far as students who want to take more initiative and maybe get involved with coaching more, we will have some students who coach club rosters, maybe on a volunteer basis, or they work and coach local high school teams in the area. We're going to reach out to them and see if any of them would like to utilize our students and their expertise. And in occasion, we will also have students who serve as paid coaches for the program. But it's really just about making sure that the opportunities we provide students are high quality and we're not, once again, crossing that line where basically it just feels like students are running everything to the detriment of the experience. We don't want it to feel like it's just students supporting students. We want to have the university really support them.
That's great, Dylan. Well, thank you so much for your time. Just to wrap it up, like, where can people find you or the program?
Yeah. So we are at UWRF Esports on everything. Maybe not threads yet, but pretty much every platform you can find us there. My personal accounts are always Coach Gentilcore or Esports Dylan, one of the two. The best way to reach me is through Discord at Coach Gentilcore or through my email, dylan.gentilcore@uwrf.edu. I'm always happy to communicate with students, families, talk to them about what we're building here and how it might align with what you want out of your college experience.
Well, thanks, Dylan, for your time, and we stay in touch.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ivan, for having me, and best of luck to all the students out there looking to find their spot in the upcoming year.